Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. On the show tonight, after Chicago finally got its first significant snowfall this week, we look back at the year's most intense weather events.
Necesitamos un poquito de entusiasmo navideño.
We'll show you what some artists and businesses are doing to keep the spirits up in Pilsen.
Trubisky to the middle of the field for the touchdown.
Can the Bears beat the Packers and make the playoffs in the last regular season game? Former Bear James Big Cat Williams weighs in. And Geoffrey Baer on the not-so-common brick that helped build Chicago. But first tonight, we begin with a look at what Mother Nature thought of 2020. Hurricanes, wildfires, a destructive derecho, and more. It was a banner year for intense weather events around the world and right here in the Midwest. And to top it all off, Chicago saw its first significant snowfall of winter just this week. Joining us to unpack it all are Victor Gensini, professor of geographic and atmospheric science at Northern Illinois University, and Scott Collis, an atmospheric scientist at Argonne National Laboratory. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight, both of you. So Chicago saw its first real snow this week, which comes after what's felt like a relatively mild winter so far. Scott, has that been the case?
Very much so. So we've only had 2.8 inches of snowfall to date, only two measurable snowfalls, an average temperature of 33 degrees, which is running about 5 degrees above normal.
And Victor, what can we expect, over the next few months in terms of potential snowfall and temperature?
Well, given the mild start, it would be easy to say that this mildness continues. But if you look at the statistics back through the observational record, you'll notice that actually the first part of winter isn't really a good predictor of what is potentially to come in the latter half of winter in January and February.
So what do we know about what we can expect then? Or are models showing anything so far?
Yeah, we can't say too much. We do know that there is an ongoing weak La Nina, and that's expected to fade, which would actually argue for more of a colder and snowier pattern as we go into the later part of winter. But there's a significant amount of variability that happens around those numbers. So it's really hard to pin down at this point what the rest of the winter will look like. All we know so far is it's been unprecedentedly warm and mild across most of the area.
And of course, one of the biggest, local weather stories this year was the derecho windstorm across the Midwest. Victor, remind us what that is and what the fallout was from that this summer.
Absolutely. Derechos are fascinating. The word derecho is actually of Spanish origin. It means to the front, which is basically this big windstorm. And this particular one on August 10th, started out in eastern Nebraska, traversed all the way across Iowa, and ended up impacting northern Illinois and northwest Indiana in the form of 70 mile per hour plus winds. It actually produced 140 mile per hour winds in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And northern Illinois is really no stranger to these derechos, these long-lived windstorms. But this particular one is going to go down in the record books of producing over $20 billion in damages when it's all said and done.
Scott, of course, this was also the busiest hurricane season on record in the Atlantic. What was behind that?
Yeah, 30 named storms. Broke all kinds of records in terms of the number of hurricanes. Like all weather, you need particular ingredients to get a hurricane. Two of the main ingredients, or the main ingredients, hurricane fuel, is warm ocean temperatures, and we had them in abundance. Also, the winds were just the right, not too strong, not too weak to spin these hurricanes up. And we had an unprecedented year with most of the damage focused across Central America with disastrous impacts in countries like Nicaragua.
And you said 30 named storms to the point where we ended up into the Greek alphabet to name these storms.
Yes, yeah. And those final ones were some of the most damaging ones with Eta and Iota.
And Victor, sorry, you were about to jump in.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to mention that that's really the only second time it's ever happened. The second most active season compared to this year would have been 2005, when many viewers will remember storms like Hurricane Wilma and Hurricane Katrina.
Right. And of course, there were widespread wildfires in the western U.S. and Australia. Victor, is a destructive fire season like this something that we can expect again in 2021?
2021, picking individual years is difficult, but one thing we do know is that climate change has loaded the dice, especially in the Western United States, to create more favorable regimes for wildfires. And if you think about it from a probabilistic standpoint, we certainly are expecting more of these types of wildfire seasons as we go forward in the future. And in fact, all together across the United States, we don't think of these wildfires maybe as individual events. They happen over, they're burning large amounts of acreage over several days or even weeks. But when it's all said and done, I think the wildfires in the Western United States will be some of the most really impactful weather events of 2020.
And Victor, what really worries me is we're starting to see the merging of the southern and northern hemisphere fire seasons. As the fire seasons get longer and longer, the Australian fire season is now butting up against the Western US fire season.
Yeah, that does sound frightening. Now, earlier in the pandemic, though, we saw a dramatic drop in pollution as countries went into shutdown. We're going to see some satellite maps of France and Italy. Now, these are from March. Scott, what do we know about the impact on air quality?
So, again, with the weather, air pollution is made up of ingredients. One of the main precursors to photochemical smog are dioxides of nitrogen, such as nitrogen dioxide, and that's produced from burning fuel and burning coal and burning all kinds of other things. So when we had the sudden shutdown, the sudden reduction in economic activity, sending people home in the factories, we could see that shutdown from space. NASA has special cameras they fly around that can image these precursors, and that matches up with the anecdotal evidence we see in the photos. But doing attribution is really hard. And as a scientist, we're very cautious about attributing something to another thing. So the science is still being done to work out what the actual impact was of that.
And over the past year, of course, we've heard a lot about high lake levels in the Great Lakes. Scott, where do things stand today?
So in May, we had our wettest May ever. June was pretty normal. And then in August, pretty much the only rainfall we got in all of August was from the derecho. So we had only 0.8 inches of rainfall. It was the 7th driest August on record. And while most of the rainfall that goes into the lake actually comes from other states, that was pretty consistent across the board. So we actually saw lake levels really start to drop in the end of August into September, because there are two main things that control lake levels. There is evaporation from the lake and rainfall into the lake. Actually, we lose very little of the lake out into the ocean.
I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on it in 2020, along with a lot of other weather events. My thanks to Scott Collis and Victor Gensini.
Thank you, Brandis.
Thank you.
A nonprofit on Chicago's Lower West Side is getting creative this holiday season. The Pilsen initiative is designed to boost business and support local artists amid the coronavirus. WTTW News Director and Chicago Tonight Latino Voices host Hugo Balta brought us this story earlier this month. Here's another look.
Just to bring a little holiday cheer.
This winter, Pilsen's iconic 18th Street is finding new ways to get into the holiday spirit. Small businesses are partnering with local artists, bringing festive window displays to the neighborhood.
Que necesitamos un poquito de entusiasmo navideño.
The initiative is also a healthy competition, says Alex Esparza, president of the Economic Strategies Development Corporation, a nonprofit in Pilsen. Residents can vote for their favorite displays online. The winning artist will receive $1,000.
It was the Macy's or the Marshall on State Street kind of idea of families coming out and visualizing this window displays.
The 2020 Christmas Window Walk is both an opportunity for local artists to showcase their work and to increase foot traffic on 18th Street, Pilsen's commercial corridor, which Esparza says has significantly seen a decrease throughout the pandemic. The initiative is welcome help during a challenging time, says Pilsen artist Leticia Rodarte.
It's been difficult. It's been very difficult because under normal circumstances, artists have a hard time selling their art. But now during the pandemic, it's even worse.
Rodarte created the window display at Cafe Jumping Bean. She used recycled items like corn leaves to recreate a Christmas moment from her childhood. She hopes it reminds residents passing by of their own families.
Especially the Latinos that are familiar with the scenario. They're like, oh, I remember when I was a child. Oh my God, my grandmother's tortillas and my grandmother's this. So it makes them happy. It's a moment that amongst all the chaos makes them happy.
Throughout the pandemic, some organizations have pivoted to drive-through events, but Pilsen's window displays are detailed, requiring them to be viewed up close. It's really meant to be seen in person right outside the window. Can you tell us a little bit more about that specific strategy?
So, I mean, it's very easy to be able to drive through a neighborhood because you can go through a neighborhood in 5 minutes. But that doesn't really necessarily generate anything outside of just traffic.
Esparza hopes the intricate displays will bring more business to the community. That was Stephanie Seasonton's goal when she designed a storefront of Mexican gift shop Escaramuza.
It allowed me to not only continue to be creative, but also help the community. I'm hoping that this was able to help Julio bring in more business and visibility to his wonderful gift shop here.
Escaramuza owner Julio Velázquez says so far it has.
So, sí ha ayudado. La gente se para enfrente de la decoración, se toma fotografías. Durante el fin de semana hemos notado eso, que a la gente le atrae. O sea, sí ha tenido un impacto positivo para el negocio.
That's also true for Rodarte's display at Café Jumping Bean, says owner Elacer Delgado. And he says the full Christmas walk has helped lift the spirits of residents passing by.
I see the people, stopping by, taking pictures of it and checking in on social media with it. So that's been nice. So, it's, and I see it up and down 18th Street. It's not just our location. I see it at the other spots that have it. The artwork and the windows have definitely done, a little bit to help, with the mood of people.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Hugo Balta.
Voting for the window walk ended last week. Artist Maggie Reynoso's 90s glam display at Pilsen Vintage won the contest. You can catch the decorations through January 3rd on 18th and surrounding streets. Okay, a win and they're in. That's right. In this up and down season, the Bears just need a win in the final regular season game this Sunday, and they are in the playoffs. Now, while they've won 3 straight games, the next opponent, though, is a mighty one, the Green Bay Packers. Can the Bears topple their biggest rival to reach the postseason during a year that's been anything but normal? Joining us once again to offer his take is former Chicago Bears offensive lineman James Big Cat Williams. Happy New Year, James.
Happy New Year, Brandis. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So 2020, it's been a difficult year for many. Do times like these remind you of the importance of sports and bringing people together?
Well, it does. I mean, you get an opportunity to spend time with family in a normal year. And, this year, some people have to do it via Skype and Duo and different, avenues like that, just because, they have older people in their family and they want to keep them safe. But even for the athletes, being able to see your family isn't, necessarily a good thing right now, because you don't want to transmit anything to them or have them transmit anything to you that you're going to take back into a facility.
In the spring, when the pandemic was ramping up, did you expect the season to unfold as it did?
No. I don't think there was any way that anyone could predict that they would get all these games in with the limited amount of distractions that they have, and still be this close to finishing the season on time like they had planned.
Now, it's being reported that the Browns have shut down their practice facility after 2 additional positive COVID tests from a coach and a practice squad player, following 3 players being placed on the COVID reserve list. With vaccinations rolling out next year, do you envision the 2021 NFL football season returning to some sort of normalcy? Maybe we'll see fans in the stadiums, in the seats?
I hope so. I think everyone's ready for it, not only the athletes, but just your everyday person that just wants to go see a game, that, just wants to be out and amongst other people. So, you have to hope that this vaccine works. And, if the vaccine is what they say it is, then next year things should be a little more back to normal. But I can't see them this soon being all the way back.
Yeah, I think everyone's hoping sooner than later, whenever that is. So a win against the Packers on Sunday, and that would put the Bears in the playoffs, though the past 3 teams that they've consecutively beat, the Jaguars, Texans, and the Vikings, they all had sort of middling to losing records. But the 12-3 Packers, that's a different story, and they beat the Bears last time badly, 41-25. Can the Bears get it done?
I'd like to say yes. What we've seen out of the offense the last couple of weeks has been very productive, but you also haven't faced a defense that's in the top 20 in the last 4 weeks. So this is going to be a test for them. Green Bay doesn't have the best defense in the world. They give up the run. They give up the pass. They played a little better against the pass in the past, but we will see. The Bears are in a unique situation. If they lose, they can still make it to the playoffs if Arizona lose. So even though the Packers go into this game knowing they need this game, if they play it well and come out with some type of moral victory, I guess you could say, they can still be in the playoffs. And you know what they say, once you get to the playoffs, everything changes.
All right, so what does the Bears defense need to do to contain Aaron Rodgers in that arm?
Well, I don't know if you can contain Aaron Rodgers. First of all, you're going to have to, all those guys that are making those millions of dollars up along the front, in that front 7, Mack, Hicks, Quinn, they're going to have to earn their paychecks. You're going to have to put pressure on on Rodgers and, make him uncomfortable. You're going to have to, even when he gets the ball away, you're still going to have to put some licks on him. They're still going to have to hit him. So defensively, I think shutting down the run is the most important thing, but you're going to have to put pressure on Rodgers. You're going to have to get people in his face, people around his legs, around his arms, and, just rattling.
How important would you say this game is in sort of defining Mitch Trubisky's future and his legacy in Chicago? Is he going to put on the uniform next year?
I don't know. I think it's big right now because, you have seen improvement out of Mitch. You still see him making some of the silly mistakes, like throwing in the triple coverage in the end zone. But all in all, Mitch has played better. But Mitch has played better because the offensive line has played better. The running game has looked better. The coaches have changed their point of attack as far as what they expect out of this offense right now with Mitch back there. So, you can build on this. You look at teams like the Rams that have schemes like what the Bears are running now. If you can get somebody in here that can run that scheme, then Mitch isn't a bad quarterback to have for next year.
All right. Big, bold prediction. What is it?
I'm going 27-24 Bears.
Going for the Bears.
I'm going for the Bears.
How are they going to pull that off?
It means a lot. Like I said, I just think that defense steps up. I think the front 7, Smith, Trevathan, Mack, Quinn, Hicks, all these guys, they get it together for a week and they're able to put the pressure on Rodgers early in the game, and Rodgers early in the game. So I'm pulling for him. I think they can get it done.
All right, Big Cat. Thanks as always. Hope to see you next year.
Thanks a lot. See you next year.
Up next, an encore presentation of one of our favorite editions of Ask Geoffrey and a look at one of Chicago's main building blocks.
We can get past the idea of turning this into a political topic and really get to serving our communities. That's something I can get behind.
Maybe we can use this as a calling card to unite.
Chicago's brick buildings put on a refined face for the street side. But if you peek past the facade, you'll find that what's holding them up is a little bit rougher. Geoffrey Baer is here to tell us how the brick that's made of Chicago also built Chicago in tonight's Ask Geoffrey. Hey, Geoffrey.
Hi, Brandis.
So the question is, it's from Lloyd Fry in Chicago. My wife and I are fans of the HGTV show Hometown, which focuses on a couple updating and remodeling homes in Laurel, Mississippi. They refer to Chicago brick in many episodes of the show. What is Chicago brick and what is its origin and history? Shout out to my home state of Mississippi. Geoffrey, first, I think you're giving new meaning to the word shelter in place. Where are you?
I am. I'm in my own basement of my house in Evanston. The house was built in 1904, and the reason I'm down here is because the foundation is made of the very thing our caller is asking about, Chicago brick, or more correctly called Chicago common brick. It's perfect that this is the indigenous brick of Chicago because it truly is the Grabowski of building materials, and Chicago is famous for it. As you can see, these are not the refined red bricks from St. Louis or the smooth cream colored bricks that come from Milwaukee. Those are called face brick. Our common bricks are like Chicago itself, rough around the edges and full of character, imperfections, and diversity. And that's because of the clay beneath our feet. It was deposited around the shore of Lake Michigan and actually well inland by the last glaciers when they receded about 10,000 years ago. It's called blue clay. And it's fairly close to the surface, so it's easy to mine. It's high in lime and iron, and it's littered with pebbles and other glacial debris, so that when the bricks are fired in a kiln, they turn a variety of colors from sort of dusky yellow to pale pink, and they're speckled with all those little bits and pieces embedded in the clay. By comparison, the clay under St. Louis is much smoother and it's high in iron oxide. So it turns a beautiful uniform red color when it's fired in a kiln.
Not gonna lie, Geoffrey, I had to Google Grabowski, but moving on. I see red and yellow brick buildings all around Chicago, though.
Oh, well, right. But if you look closely, that lovely face brick, which is imported here from other places, is only on the front of typical Chicago buildings. The common brick is used on the sides and the rear facades and internally for, like at my house, foundations, chimney flues, structural walls. That's because it was much cheaper and easily available, which made it attractive to builders far beyond Chicago. Chicago brick back in the day, cost about $5 to $10 per thousand bricks, compared to as much as $35 per thousand for face brick. This is according to the person I consider to be Chicago's foremost brick expert, Will Quam, who operates the website Brick of Chicago and gives brick tours. He was a real key to answering this question. You might remember we featured him on Chicago Tonight last year when he showed us St. Stanislaus Kostka Church from 1881 in Pulaski Park, which, as you can see, was built entirely from Chicago common brick, even on the facade. That was done to save construction costs.
And Geoffrey, how did Chicago become a brick boomtown?
Well, we started making bricks here in Chicago as early as the 1840s, but it really took off after the Chicago fire of 1871, when new building codes made it all but impossible to rebuild out of wood. In 1 year alone, 1910, we produced nearly 1 billion of these, quote, humble cubes of clay, as one writer lovingly described them that year. At one time, there were clay pits and brickyards all over Chicago and in suburbs like Blue Island and Park Ridge. Park Ridge even was originally called Brickton. I am holding an original Brickton brick. So this is sort of a pinkish Chicago common brick. I was given this by the Park Ridge Historical Society. The community dropped the name and renamed itself Park Ridge after all the clay was mined out by 1873. The last Chicago brickyard closed in as recently as 1981.
Yeah, but Newark gets to be called Brick City. Go figure. Geoffrey, why doesn't Chicago make brick anymore?
Well, newer building techniques, including steel and concrete block, are just cheaper for structural purposes. And it's very labor intensive to lay bricks. Also, old brick making operations couldn't comply with modern environmental laws without costly modifications. And much of the clay near the surface that was cheap and easy to mine was exhausted. But in recent years, Chicago common brick has surged in popularity here. And if you believe that HGTV show that our caller asked about, as far away as Mississippi. When old buildings here are torn down, the bricks are salvaged, cleaned, and resold, like those at Bricks Incorporated in Little Village. And they're not just for utilitarian structural purposes anymore. These days, people have come to prize the old bricks for their character, having weathered and mellowed on buildings for decades or even for more than a century. Loft conversions expose the brick in existing buildings, and reclaimed brick is often used in new construction, like in this modern home in the Bucktown neighborhood.
Okay, bricks with character, just like the city. Thank you, Geoffrey.
My pleasure.
And you can find more on this and other Ask Geoffrey questions on our website. And while you're there, be sure to send in your own questions about Chicago to Ask Geoffrey.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part through the generous support of the Julius Frankel Foundation.
And that's our show for this Thursday night, abbreviated to bring you United in Song, celebrating the resilience of America. And please join us tomorrow night at 7 for the Week in Review. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and healthy. Have a good night and a Happy New Year.
Closed captioning is made possible in part by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, wishing all a happy and healthy holiday season.